championship bound, baby! Woo! Big love, baby! Woo! Here, man. It got a little crazy out there, but we made it through.
We're gonna keep stacking the day, so see you in the championship.
Let's go!
It was chippy the last time these two teams faced off too. Sophie Cunningham suffered her ankle injury in that game, but in addition to that, she actually had part of her front tooth knocked out. She made contact with Jacy Sheldon as Caitlin Clark knocks down the triple.
But what people don't talk about enough is how hard you have to work to be able to be that good. All the hours that she's spent perfecting her craft.
Retreating, firing, and hitting.
So she can do that.
On Indiana arguing the call.
I mean, step back, you're late. She almost looks you in the eye.
Can we talk about the physicality for a second? Two players on the Indiana Fever got injured last night by the same player on the Connecticut Sun, and that was Jacy Sheldon. And I tweeted about it. She was playing so reckless. I'm fine with players playing aggressive, but there is a thin line between playing aggressive and playing reckless. When you dive for a ball, you don't land on somebody's leg. She landed on top of Sydney Colson's leg, and her leg got stuck and literally twisted around. Both injuries, both Sydney Colson and Sophie Cunningham, were contact injuries.
Sophie Cunningham went down first with what looked like a deliberate hit. The contact was hard, too hard for what should have been routine basketball. Then Sydney Colson got hurt in another questionable play that had everyone asking what exactly was happening out there. The worst part? Jacy Sheldon was right in the middle of both incidents.
In every great sports rivalry, there's a moment the game stops being about the points on a scoreboard. It becomes about respect, about territory, and about a line being crossed. For Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, that moment wasn't just a foul. It was a declaration, a sign that the unwritten rules of the game, the ones that exist in the space between whistles, were about to be enforced, whether the referees liked it or not. The story of what happened on June 17th isn't just about a heated rematch. It's about a team deciding they would no longer be victims and one player delivering the most talked about foul of the season to prove it. This whole saga begins not with a bang, but with a limp. On May 30th, the Indiana Fever traveled to face the Connecticut Sun, and the game felt wrong from the start. The Sun, known for their aggressive, hard-nosed defense, seemed to be playing a different sport entirely. It wasn't just competitive, it was predatory. The welcome to the league rookie treatment that had followed Caitlin Clark all season suddenly took a much darker turn. And the Fever felt completely helpless as they watched two of their own go down. First, it was Sophie Cunningham, a tough Faznol's guard, who was left writhing in pain with an ankle injury after a collision. Then, just to twist the knife, Sydney Colson was taken out in a separate incident, her leg twisting awkwardly after a player dove directly into her knee in the aftermath. As the Fever's training staff tended to their wounded, a single unifying thread emerged from both plays. The player at the center of both incidents was the same: Connecticut's Jacy Sheldon. To the Fever and their fans, it felt less like a coincidence and more like a pattern. Sheldon was playing with a level of recklessness that crossed the thin line between aggressive and dangerous. The play that injured Colson was particularly egregious, a dive for a loose ball that went straight through the player's knee. A move so dangerous, it's a wonder it wasn't immediately flagged. But it wasn't. In fact, it wasn't even called a foul. The silence from the referees was deafening, and it sent a chilling message to the Fever. You're on your own out here, for Caitlin Clark. Watching this unfold was more than just seeing her teammates get hurt. It was personal, because the player, at the center of it all, Jacy Sheldon, wasn't just another opponent. She was, in many ways, Clark's collegiate arch-nemesis. During their legendary Iowa versus Ohio State matchups, Sheldon made it her personal mission to be Clark's shadow. She was a defensive pest, known for getting under Clark's skin with relentless pressure, physical bumps, and constant chatter. That history hung in the air. This wasn't just a random act of aggression. This was Clark's longtime rival taking out her new teammates. The frustration in the arena was palpable as the Fever lost a nail-biter. 85-83. But the loss on the scoreboard stung far less than the loss of two key players to injuries that felt entirely preventable. As the Fever left the court that night, a quiet resentment began to simmer. They were angry at the Sun for the plays, but they were furious with the officials for allowing it to happen. The league brags about its physicality, a badge of honor for the WNBA. But this wasn't just physical. It was, as many argued, reckless. This simmering anger carried through the next few weeks. Clark herself would miss time with a quad injury, but the memory of that May 30th game lingered in the locker room. They knew the rematch was coming. June 17th was circled on the calendar, not just as another game, but as a chance for redemption. A chance to prove that they wouldn't be pushed around in their own house. When June 17th finally arrived, the atmosphere in Gainbridge Fieldhouse was electric. This wasn't just another game. This was a reunion charged with bad blood. Clark was back, and from the moment she stepped onto the court for warm-ups, you could see the intensity in her eyes. She wasn't just there to play. She was there to make a statement. And, of course, the assignment for guarding her was none other than Jacy Sheldon. The familiar dance began immediately, Sheldon shadowing Clark's every move, getting in her face, bumping her off her path. The game was chippy from the opening tip, with both teams talking, shoving, and letting the officials know that this was going to be a battle. The tension was a thick fog, and you just knew a single spark could ignite an explosion. That spark came in the third quarter. Clark was bringing the ball up the court with Sheldon defending her closely. Sheldon reached in, ostensibly for a steal, but her hand didn't find the ball. Instead, her fingers went directly into Caitlin Clark's eye. The contact was sharp and immediate. Clark's head snapped back, and she instantly grabbed her face, a mix of pain and pure fury washing over her. This was it, the culmination of everything that had been building since May. The same player who had injured her teammates was now coming directly at her, with a play that went far beyond the scope of basketball. In that moment of instinct and anger, Clark reacted. She shoved Sheldon away from her, a gut reaction to get the player who just jabbed her in the eye out of her personal space. What happened next was a masterclass in officiating absurdity, as Clark stood there squinting and trying to regain her vision. The victim of a clear and dangerous foul, the referees blew their whistles. The crowd, having seen the eye poke on the Jumbotron, was already in an uproar. But instead of penalizing Sheldon for the initial act, the officials huddled and made a decision that defied all logic. They issued offsetting technical fouls. One for Sheldon for the eye poke, which was later upgraded to a flagrant one, and one for Caitlin Clark for pushing Sheldon away after being poked in the eye. The arena erupted in a chorus of boos. Clark, who had just returned from injury, was now being punished for her own reaction to being fouled. The message was, once again, clear. If you go after Clark, it's key, be the one who gets penalized for fighting back. But the chaos was only just beginning. It's key, as the officials were trying to sort out the technicals. Another Connecticut Sun player, Marina Mabrey, decided to take matters into her own hands. Watching the scene unfold, Mabrey saw Clark standing near the sideline and, in an act of what can only be described as misguided team loyalty, she charged forward. This wasn't a basketball play. It wasn't a box out or a screen. Mabrey lowered her shoulder and blatantly body-checked a completely unsuspecting Caitlin Clark, sending her sprawling to the floor. The hit was so unnecessary and so far removed from the game action that it looked more like a scene from a hockey game. The entire Indiana Fever bench leaped to their feet, screaming at the officials, who somehow seemed oblivious to the second assault on their star player in less than a minute. This was the moment the game completely broke down. Coach Stephanie White was apoplectic on the sideline, gesturing wildly and screaming at the referees. trying to get them to understand that her players were being targeted. She knew that the officials had lost complete control of the game. After a lengthy review that felt like an eternity, the referees delivered another baffling verdict. Marina Mabrey, for her blatant and non-basketball act of body-checking Clark, received a simple technical foul. The exact same penalty Clark received for a retaliatory push. The math simply didn't add up, getting poked in the eye and shoving. Back was somehow equivalent to sprinting over and decking an opponent. The Fever, their coaches, and their fans were left utterly dumbfounded by the incompetence. After the game, Coach Stephanie White didn't hold back. In her press conference, she unleashed the frustration that had been building for weeks. When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long, she said, her voice filled with controlled anger. This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do. And when you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete and they're going to have their teammates' backs. She was right. She had been warning the officials since the first quarter that the game was getting out of hand. They didn't listen. And now the message was crystal clear to her players. If the referees won't protect you, you will have to protect yourselves. Which brings us to the final minute of the game. The Fever were up big, cruising to an 87-70 victory. The outcome on the scoreboard was no longer in doubt. But the outcome on the court, that was a different story. Sophie Cunningham, who had been injured by Jacy Sheldon back in May, was on the floor. As Sheldon drove to the basket for a meaningless layup in the final seconds, Cunningham saw her chance. This wasn't about stopping a basket. This was about settling a score. This was about enforcing the unwritten rules. She wasn't thinking about the score. She was thinking about her sprained ankle in May. She was thinking about watching Clark get poked in the eye with no real consequences. And she was thinking about Marina Mabrey getting away with a cheap shot on her teammate. As Sheldon went up for the layup, Cunningham didn't go for the ball. She delivered the most intentional, calculated, and, for Fever fans, satisfying flagrant foul of the entire season. She wrapped Sheldon up in a hard bear hug and pulled her down to the floor. It was not a basketball play. It was a message delivered with force and clarity. It was payback. It was justice. It was Sophie Cunningham telling the entire league that if you mess with one of her teammates, you will have to answer for it. This was her taking the control that the officials had abdicated. She was willing to take the punishment to send the message, and that's exactly what happened. The whistle blew and chaos erupted once more. Sheldon jumped up, ready to confront Cunningham. Players from both teams rushed in, and a scuffle broke out near the baseline, spilling into the area in front of the fans. The officials, finally forced to act decisively, handed out punishments. Jacy Sheldon was ejected. Another player was tossed. And Sophie Cunningham was assessed a flagrant foul, leading to her automatic ejection from the game. As she walked off the court, a massive grin on her face, the Indiana crowd rose to its feet, chanting her name. Sophie, Sophie, Sophie. In that moment, she wasn't a player getting ejected. She was a hero who had stood up for her team. The Fever went on to win the game 88-71, securing their spot in the franchise's first ever Commissioner's Cup final. Clark finished with 20 points, leading a balanced team effort. But the numbers on the stat sheet were secondary. This victory was about something much bigger. It was a baptism by fire. It was the night the Indiana Fever proved they wouldn't be bullied, they wouldn't be intimidated, and that they would protect their own at all costs. It was the night they stopped being just a collection of talented players and became a family, bonded by a shared fight. This single, chaotic game became a microcosm for the entire WNBA at this moment in time. The league is at a crossroads, struggling to balance its gritty, physical identity with the undeniable need to protect its new generation of superstars, especially Caitlin Clark, who is driving unprecedented attention and revenue. The incident forced a league-wide conversation. Where is the line? And what happens when the officials charged with drawing that line fail so spectacularly? The image of Sophie Cunningham walking off the court to a standing ovation is the perfect symbol of this team's transformation. They found their fight. But the question lingers, and it's one the league will have to answer. Was this a necessary act of team justice in a game the officials had lost control of? Or was it a dangerous escalation that sets a new volatile precedent? What happens when a team decides it has to police the game themselves? This one night in Indiana might have answered that question, and the WNBA may never be the same. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Was Sophie Cunningham's foul justified? And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest moments in sports.